Welcome back to the Smarter Marketer podcast, brought to you by Rocket Agency. I'm your host, James Lawrence. Welcome back to the Smarter Marketer podcast. I'm here today with Drew McLellan. Drew, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me.
So I always enjoy talking marketing and agency life with yourself. So Drew owns and runs the Agency Management Institute in Denver, Colorado. The AMI works with hundreds of agencies around the world, including Rocket, essentially to help agencies operate better, providing lots of benchmarking insights and data. Also provides a range of education, courses, seminars, podcasts, awesome content that Drew pumps out for agency leaders and agency owners around the world. And I think this is actually true, Drew. I don't think there's many people on the earth that have better exposure and have like complete transparency into the inner workings of agencies and what's happening with agencies, just due to the fact that you do have hundreds of agencies around the world that trust you, that lean on you for support. So I think you do provide like a really interesting insight into the landscape and what's happening in agency world. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's a privileged position. I mean, as you know, I was an agency owner. And so I came into this part of my career having walked in the shoes of the people that we serve. And so I think, that gives people a level of comfort and credibility that I'm not just some consultant that decided to serve agency. Like, I'm taking care of my own people.
Yeah.
And two, I think agency owners don't have a lot of safe places to talk about the hard things. And the hard things are, there's certainly hard things on the client facing side, like how do we serve our clients better? But there's also a lot of business issues that are challenging for agency owners, and they don't have a lot of safe places where somebody really understands their business and they can talk about it. And so in our world, as you know, I mean, we see full financials, we know all the players on the team. And so there's a professional intimacy that is created pretty quickly because the agency owners and leaders are hungry for guidance. And in some cases, to the word you used earlier, benchmark, like, are we normal? Is what's happening to us happening to other people? Is it an us problem, or is it an industry problem, or is it an us opportunity or an industry opportunity? So they're willing to be more open because they want that level of conversation. And so, yeah, it's a privileged position, and I take it very seriously. I think of us as, we are their confidant, and so we hold the secrets of many, many, many agencies across the globe, and which also gives us the opportunity then to be more beneficial to every agency because we have this macro view. So it's a lucky position to be in, for sure.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely not luck. I think the listeners to the Smarter Marketer podcast are mostly Australian in-house marketers, right? And we're chatting off air. And so for me, I understand that, you, the listener, you're probably not running an agency. You might be working in one, probably not. But I do think there's so much value from the discussion we can have around what's happening in agency land, what are those macro trends, how to get the most out of your agency, right? Because I think often there is this unnecessary divide between in-house and agency, and I think we stand so much to gain by kind of working collaboratively. And I do feel that you mentioned kind of luck, but I think as probably a lot of your clientele come from, they start with your thought leadership, right? You do a weekly EDM, which is awesome, and I think even if you are an in-house resource, signing up to Drew's content, you do your own podcast, you do lots of webinars. Some of it's gated, some of it's not. It's the content itself speaks for itself, and I know there's agency owners that might not necessarily have engaged with you, by way of consulting or a fee for service, but who get so much value out of the content, right? Which is awesome.
Yeah, probably. Our audience is hundreds of thousands of agencies that are consuming some part of our content, and most of them will never give us $1, which is fine. I mean, our goal is to be the most trusted agency resource in the world, that we are the one that agencies can rely on. And I think we think of in-house agencies as being something very different, but other than that, they don't have to go hunting for clients. They're running an agency in a lot of ways. And so a lot of the issues and challenges, staffing, lots of things, a lot of those challenges that full-on agencies deal with so are the in-house agencies. And so I think I believe whether you look in the mirror as an in-house agency, leader and see it or not, you have quite a bit in common with your agency brethren because you're doing the same work. It's just who you serve is a little different. That's all.
It's really interesting. I haven't thought of it from that perspective, and there is that kind of rise of the in-house agency, right?
Yeah.
As a kind of a theme around the world. Haven't thought of your specific content and positioning as being, but yeah, why not, right? The only difference being that kind of business, but one of the large differences being kind of new business and
Yeah.
acquisition.
Right.
It's cool. I think it'd be good before we kind of get into some of the themes around how to get the most out of your agency. What are you seeing like as the state of play? That's kind of a very broad question, but what is the state of play for agencies? And maybe talk a little bit about the US, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about worldwide after that.
Yeah. So, it's been an interesting when you look at sort of post-COVID. Um, you know, 20 was challenging for every agency on the planet. 21, people were kind of coming out of that and feeling better. 22, 21, 22 for a lot of agencies were the best years that they had in quite a few years as they were coming out of COVID. There was a lot of pent-up demand, and then 23 and 24 were harder for agencies. And so I think we went into the new year. I think there's a lot of economic uncertainty all over the world, certainly in the United States, with everything going on with the new administration and talk of tariffs and all of that. Our stock market is going bonkers right now. And so I think anytime you have that kind of uncertainty, that has huge impact on the way agencies are treated by their clients, by their prospects. And I think it has huge impact on how in-house marketers have to think about their budget, how what's being scrutinized. And so I would say right now, there's a lot of discomfort in the uncertainty. And I would say that's true worldwide. It is particularly apparent in the United States right now because our economy is, under such change right now with the new administration. And so until things sort of settle in and people go, okay, I know what new normal is. We saw this after the Great Recession, we saw it after COVID, and we'll see it, again now. The reality is you can only stall for so long, and then you have to actually do business. Otherwise, you go out of business. And so I think we're in this moment of nervousness, which everyone will have to give way to get back to work.
Yeah, it probably mirrors what we're seeing here, right? I think I think exactly as you described, 2020 through 21, 22 mirrors it. We're recording this in early April. We've got a federal election coming up in May, and as you say, it's the uncertainty, right? It's almost less which party wins once the market knows there is a bit more certainty, and the talk of tariffs has also kind of been uncertain, right, until kind of that 2nd, 3rd of April type date. So yeah, I think that's similar, and it feels to me that I was recorded a podcast recently with Darren Woolley, who's kind of a pitch consultant here. He also does some work in North America, and he was kind of talking around when we kind of come into these times and there is pressure on businesses, and more pressure than normal. There's always pressure in business, of course. You do see more pressure on results, more pressure on bottom of the funnel, more pressure on short-term marketing. You're kind of getting non-marketers more involved in decision-making processes around tenders and RFPs. And it just does create this kind of bottleneck of indecision and uncertainty, and just kind of doesn't make for great times for marketers. I think it's a difficult time.
Well, and I think it also creates unrealistic expectations. There's so much pressure, and everyone is feeling under the gun. And the average CMO's lifespan in a company isn't as long as most CMOs would like it to be. And I think when you add the external pressure on that, and you, again, as you say, you've got non-marketers now deciding how quickly things could or should happen, whether that's real or not. It creates an environment where everyone is feeling under a microscope, which I think is also a time when a lot of times in-house marketers may be more reticent to be candid with their agency, which is really the exact opposite that they should be. This is when they're under the gun and they're feeling the fire of internal pressures and expectation. That's when they should double down on transparency with their agency, so the agency can understand exactly what's going to get the pressure off of their client. So, one of the things we talk about all the time with agencies is it's your job to make your client look like a rock star and get the raise, the bonus, the promotion. But if the client won't tell you where they're getting pressure, how they're being recognized, what KPIs really impact whether they get to keep their job or not, it's hard for the agency to hit that mark. But when a client is willing to be more candid and say, look, I know we have all these things that we've planned for, but I'm telling you, my CEO is going crazy about this one metric. And if I don't get results on this metric, I'm just feeling the heat on it. So I need your help. I know I'm asking you to make a last minute change, but here's the pressure I'm under. Help me solve this problem. And then we'll go back to, business as usual. So I just think it's an opportunity for agencies and clients to come together with a shared common set of goals that allows everybody to do better work and to keep their job.
And like, why do you, because it's kind of it's the 101, isn't it, of what makes, or maybe you'll disagree with this, but for me, it's the 101 of what makes a great agency client relationship, right, is transparency. It just, to me, is so fundamental to getting great results together. Why do you, and it always astounds me as to how much prospective clients I observe in friends agencies will hold back. Like, why do you think there is that tendency to hold back and to kind of not necessarily be fully transparent with your agency partner?
I think there are several reasons. I think first and foremost, particularly in the beginning of the relationship, you don't really know each other that well, and you don't have that trust built up. I think clients typically get more candid over time as the agency proves that they have the clients back. For some clients, they've been in a situation where the agency has thrown the in-house either agency or client under the bus to try and get more money. And so they're like, are you really on my side? Or, if I tell you all the secrets, are you going to use those secrets against me? I think sometimes, and this is a hard one for clients to admit, sometimes they're not told. They may not even know what their budget is, or they may not even know what the KPIs are. I'm always astonished. And I can remember back in my agency days, I was always stunned when I would say to a client, well, what are the 4 KPIs that the board or the C-suite is looking at? And they'd be like, you know what? They haven't told me. And so some of it is, in fairness, their own ignorance. They have not been brought into the loop, and they probably don't want to say to their agency, I'm not high enough in the food chain to be told all those things, or our internal culture is such that there isn't a lot of conversation around that, and I'm not invited into those conversations. So I think sometimes they're protecting their own job or their back. I think sometimes they really don't know. I think sometimes they think that that gives them a power position over the agency, that if they tell the agency they have $100, the agency is magically going to come back with a plan for $100. So I think having more conversation around, okay, what's the total budget and how much do we want to leave aside for opportunities that we can't anticipate, and what should we plan to spend in each quarter, knowing that we can't see around the corner and know what's coming. So we need to make sure we leave some buffer in the budget to react to things that we can't anticipate. I think conversations like that help a client feel like the agency is thinking about the client's money like it's their money.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it does, and the budget one always, I guess, astounds me as well. Like and I think there's some good observations there that sometimes the person you're speaking to might not actually know the answers to the question, but it does astound me, the kind of holding back of, we're actually not doing very well, or holding back on the budget. It's like, just get all your cards out on the table. Let's work through this together. And maybe it's a sign that, potentially clients have been taken advantage of previously, right? But from my mind, it's always, let's get our cards on the table. Doesn't mean we have to commit to anything, but let's workshop this and, try to put, multiple minds together to get the outcome that we need.
I also think in some cases, clients haven't been on the agency side and they don't necessarily understand when they ask what to them seems like a simple question, how much work we have to do to actually give them a good answer to that question. And so, if I say to you, well, you know what, I've got $250,000 and I want to accomplish these things. What would you do? I don't think clients understand how many hours we spend answering that question. And then when we come back and we go, never mind, I only have 100,000, then we have to go do it all again. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to subtract some things or add some things. We have to completely rethink it. I also think some of it is a lack of awareness of how hard we work to be good stewards of their money or their KPIs or whatever, and how much effort goes into that. And I think they would probably be more thoughtful. I think clients who've worked in agencies are probably a little more thoughtful about that transparency because they know what it takes to answer the question.
Yeah, that's good. And I'd like to think that for marketers listening to this podcast that haven't worked in an agency, good job getting this far in this podcast, because I think it does show an appetite to kind of show that empathy and try to look at the other side of the fence and how we can make this work. Just taking a little step backwards, and I think we probably covered this a little bit, but based on your experience, you've owned an agency, you get exposed to so many agencies around the world. How can in-house marketers work with agencies to set the foundation for success?
I think the more the client thinks of the agency as an extension of their team, that the agency is just another highly skilled tool in the toolbox. And the more they can bring them in early in the conversation, like at the initiation of a strategy rather than placing an order. I think sometimes clients don't really tap into the depth of knowledge and experience the agency has because they bring the agency too late into so if I come to you and I say, I have a budget and here's where I want you to spend it, a lot of agencies will just say, okay, if that's the budget and that's where you want to spend it, we'll spend it. It's a more rare agency that'll say, whoa, let's go back. Help me understand why you chose that channel or channels, why the budget is what it is, how are we going to measure success? So starting earlier together and really thinking through the strategy and how you're going to measure the success and how the client has to merchandise that success inside their organization. So the agency can make sure whatever those metrics are, that they've baked in the ability to measure those metrics from the very beginning, because that's a whole lot easier than going back and trying to figure it out afterwards. So I think that's one thing. I think number two, I think clients can do a better job of appreciating the agencies that they have. But I think gratitude goes a long way in getting somebody to go above and beyond the call of duty for you. And so I think when you've asked the agency to jump through a hoop, like it's a Friday afternoon and you call them and go, sorry, I got to have this today, being a little appreciative that they dropped whatever they were doing to get that done, I think is valuable. I think allowing the agency to educate themselves about the business more, not just the marketing, but come to the plant and see how we make the thing, or sit in on some sales calls and hear what people are. Come hang out with us at the trade show booth and hear what's happening or whatever it may be. But the deeper you invite the agency in, the more they can understand the whole of the business, everything from distribution to packaging to product development, all of it. Even if the agency is never going to touch it, it does make them smarter about the business, which means the solutions they bring are going to be smarter. So kind of the opposite of what we just talked about. Rather than keeping the agency at arm's length, the closer you can bring them in, the better, because now they're just going to give you more insightful thoughts and ideas and tactics because they understand the big picture.
Yeah. And I think it's, I kind of see the last point there as it's almost just a blindness, which is when you're working in a business, you understand it, the people, the challenges,
Right.
or everything about it. And it always has astounded me over the years. And we're trying really hard at Rocket, and have kind of been aware of this, for years now, of not allowing that to happen and trying our best to get, more involved with clients. And not clients per se, but the client's business, right? And it's I think it's just genuinely just a gap of perspective, which is, you're a marketer in your company, you've got all this pressure, and you're dealing with sales teams and product teams and the C-suite and trade shows, whatever else. It's kind of hard to. Another thing is to educate the agency on all these things that are happening. But from experience, the clients of ours that do that, invite us out to look at the product, to look at the display home or the display suite, take a walk in the shoes of the prospective clients that we're trying to bring to them. It has just a transformative effect, and it's easy, right? This is not a challenging thing, right? It's just sharing knowledge. And I think they're good points. The gratitude ones in the Smarter Marketer book that Dave and I wrote, and this is, I think the two of us, not trying to preach to in-house teams how they should treat agencies and whatever else, but it goes a long way. And I think, I think at Rocket I don't think we've got a single disrespectful client, I think is actually a fair thing to say. But over the years, we've definitely had a few, and this kind of trying to bang your agency down and treat them poorly, thinking you'll get more out of them with a stick.
Right.
It just doesn't work. And I know lots of agency owners in Australia, and almost across the board, we actually love doing good work for people we like working with. And so actually being a human, being a person, thanking people if they're going above and beyond, being direct with feedback, right? It's a two-way street, but I think it has a transformative effect as well, right? As to what you're going to get from your agency partner.
Well, and the flip side of that is, I think sometimes agencies lose out on the opportunity to get that behind the curtain peek, because if the client's not going to pay for it, they're not going to go to the conference, or they're not going to go. So it's a mutual investment. So I think sometimes the clients should pick up the tab, but I think sometimes the agencies should say, you know what, you're an important enough client for us. This is your big trade show once a year. I need to be on the floor. I want to see your competitors' booth. I don't want to see pictures of it. I want to experience it. And I'm willing to invest, a day or 2 days into our relationship. And the part of that I think everybody misses is the time that you get to spend with the client, when you're not both like answering 300 emails and trying to hit deadlines, but it's also a time to get to know each other better and to listen to speakers and then talk about those speakers together. And it's great idea generation time too. And so I think both parties have to be willing to make the investment in the relationship. It's not just on the client side or on the agency side. I think it's both sides.
Yeah, massively. We've had a long-standing client, really good relationship with the marketing team and the CEO. They're quite a large insurer, and for the first time since we've been working together, we just went out and met the sales team. We went out, gave them an update on everything we've been working with over the last year, had drinks afterwards, and it was so good to put names to the faces and to hear their challenges and what their customers actually think and what they don't think. And that was the entire team from Rocket side that works on it with their entire team. And there's just no way that I don't know, 4 or 5 hour interaction won't mean that we all just do better work together, right? For the next 12 months. Right. It's just it's a no-brainer.
And again, I know everybody's moving 100 miles an hour, and clients on the inside are under incredible pressure to stick to deadlines, stick to budgets, go. They're in meetings all day, every day. So it does require making the effort, carving out the time to do it, whatever that is. But I think understanding the value of it, the residual value of it, it's not just what happens in those 3 or 4 hours, but it's how it cascades into the work, into the relationship, into the trust, that is really priceless.
100%. What are your observations on the best performing agencies you work with in terms of the actual results they drive for their clients? What are the ways they work with their clients in terms of touch points and whips and monthly meetings? And I suspect the answer is going to be it depends. But what are those ways that marketers can be trying to construct the ongoing relationship to make sure that the cadence and the working relationship is set up to actually drive the strategy that they need driven?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the answer, of course, is it depends. It's sort of like, how much does it cost to build a house? But I will say the underlying current of that question is do you as an agency truly understand what the client needs to know? Like what are they being asked internally, and how often are they being asked those questions? How often do they need updates on projects? How often, how do they need the data? Do they need a deck? Do they need an Excel spreadsheet? Do they like, how do they merchandise it up in through their organization? And, a lot of times I'll have agency folks say to me, our client is micromanaging the bejesus out of us. And I'm like, the code for that is, I feel in the dark. Like,
Mm.
I don't know what I need to know. So having really candid conversations before a project, when you first land a client, every quarter about, okay, what are, first of all, what are the success metrics that we need to measure? Number two, are we setting ourselves up to be able to measure those? Number three, how often do you need updates on those metrics to satisfy your internal audience? And then depending on the work, how often should we sit with each other and not just do an update? Because I can send you a Google sheet or an Excel spreadsheet and give you an update, but how often should we be talking about the work we're doing, the results we're seeing, and kind of what we think that indicates we should do next? Like, how often do we want to move that needle? And for most agencies, I would say they're probably touching base at a minimum with clients every couple of weeks. And a lot of agencies really are committed, especially for their larger, more complicated clients, that they're having a conversation every week. The key is, are you making those conversations actual conversations, or am I the agency just reading you a spreadsheet of data? You ask two questions, and we go, okay, have a good weekend. And there's no
Mm.
conversation. We're not actually creating new ideas together. We're not questioning the data and wondering what it means. We're not saying, okay, well, if we have data points A, B, and C, what would data point D look like? And what would that tell us? Like, you're not massaging the information together to get more out of it. And so that's, I think, the important thing is, how often do we need to actually think together as opposed to report out?
Mm. I love that. And I knew the answer was going to be it depends, right? And even for
Yeah.
Rocket, some of our clients we're meeting daily, right? And others it'd be once a month. Just depends on their needs. So it's probably a slightly not leading question, but maybe not a great question, Drew. But I think I love that point around micromanagement. I don't think I've ever thought of it that way before. I think the idea that micromanagement kind of almost doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's not a plea for help, but it's I'm fearful of what's going on here. I don't know what's going on, as opposed to this is just my tendency to micromanage, the hell out of you.
Well, and there certainly are some clients who are more inclined to micromanage, but in general, they have other stuff to do. Like,
mm,
fighting herd on us and making sure we're doing our work is really not on their I sure love to do this every day or every week list. And so
mm,
if if you're getting a lot of that from a client, it's worthy to say, I know you have a lot of meetings and other things to do, and yet you feel the need to keep checking in on this. What are we not giving you that we
mm,
could give you to ease your mind, or to give you data you don't have? Like, how can I help you not worry so much about if we're doing the work? What
mm,
do you need to know that I don't realize you need to know? And I
mm,
think in a lot of cases, clients would be relieved. They may not even know that that's why they're micromanaging. But when you ask the question that way and they pause for a minute and they go, oh, you're right. Every Thursday, I get asked this question. So I'm calling you every Wednesday to get the answer. But if I
mm.
just told you I needed the answer every Wednesday, you probably would send it to me. Like, I think sometimes the solutions are simpler than we think.
That's great. And does come back to communication, right?
Yeah,
Having that
right.
conversation and setting expectation and transparency. And this is what I really need from you guys. I don't care about the shiny monthly report, or I don't care about whatever the whip. What I care about is this. And let's
Right.
kind of let's make that happen. What what are your thoughts on, like, the if a relationship is starting to fray, starting to break down, when to repair, when to move on? What are those red flags? Like, what are your observations there? Like, there's different people have different thoughts on this, right? One is that relationships typically shouldn't be kind of terminated, and it should very much be about how do we repair. Others are like, definition of madness, keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. What are those signs that you'd say, yeah, we've got a problem, and then what should we do about it?
I mean, I think the signs from the client's perspective are a couple things. Number one, they feel like the agency's just phoning it in. They're not really getting fresh thinking, new ideas. The agency isn't really questioning their own work and what could be better. Two, they're not getting the information they need, or they're not hitting the KPIs that they need, and the agency doesn't seem to be as freaked out as they should be that they're underperforming. And there's no conversation about why we're underperforming at mutual, again, that ideation conversation about, okay, let's look at this and figure out why we're not getting the results we want. I think a big one for clients is when I tell you something is broken and you don't fix it, that's challenging, right? I'm being judged by your performance. Internally, I am being judged by how my agency, the agency I either inherited or picked, is performing. And so I don't have a lot of time to chat with you 4 times about a performance issue or a behavior issue or a lack of transparency issue, whatever it is, because I'm going to get fired or I'm going to get reprimanded, or I'm just going to get a bad reputation that I can't pick a good agency. None of those do I want on my record. So I think a big one for clients is when they don't feel heard. And so I think looking for when things start changing in a relationship, you feel like that you get a spidey sense when a client's not happy or they're asking more questions, or you can tell by facial expressions or body language that something's off. I think it's our job as agencies to go, you know what? Something feels off. Can we please have a conversation? I'm getting a sense that we're disappointing you in some way, and I want to know what that is so I can fix it. I think as long as you get, I don't believe clients expect their agencies to be perfect, but I do think they expect their agencies to keep trying to get better. And I think as long as you actively are trying to get better, even when you hit a bad spot, you've got enough sort of emotional currency in the relationship for the client and the agency to work together to try and solve the problem. I think when it's time to say goodbye is when how the agency is performing is now reflecting badly on you, and you've tried to fix it and you're not getting any traction, right? That, if you call the agency owner and say, look, we need to talk, and that person's not calling you back, that day or the next day, if you feel like you are a small fish in a big pond and you're not, you have all the most junior people and you don't have any sort of senior savvy smart people, there are signs that say I'm not important to this agency anymore. And then I think it's worth one conversation, and if things don't change, then I think it's perfectly appropriate to go, you know what, this relationship is not working for me. I do not believe clients want to fire their agency. Finding and hiring a new agency is a pain in the rear end. And for the whole time in that transition, they know they're not going to get the best work out of the old agency while they're transitioning to a new one. Again, that's a danger point for them in their job. So they want very much, if they've picked you, they want very much for it to work. Now, does that mean they know how to communicate it? Maybe not. Does that mean we as agency people have to watch for those signs, and rather than sort of passively aggressively dealing with it, we need to go in and, again, we keep using the word transparency, but with all candor say, I'm feeling a disconnect between us. Is it my imagination? Are we letting you down somehow? Are you mad at us? Or what's going on? Like, how do I get back in good graces with you? What's not working for you, and how can we fix it? And so I think that's a mutual responsibility.
Yeah, that's really, really good words there. It's I think the feeling for me is, quote unquote, they don't care. It's just that sense that an in-house team, in-house marketing manager, resource, the agency just doesn't care. I think that care factor, and I think we spell that right. I think you said spidey sense. It's turning up to things on time. It's proactively reaching out with ideas and insights. It's resetting strategy. It's having senior people involved. It's having, changing the account up if it's been a number of years.
Work. It's being excited about the results.
Yeah, all that stuff. And so I think that from the agency viewpoint is just so crucial. And then I do feel from the the in-house viewpoint, you said it, it's the communication piece, right? If you're not happy about something, you have to raise it, and you
Right.
have to raise it at a senior level, whoever you dealt with on the way in. We're just not happy about X. We've got uncertainty about Y. We don't think, Z's happening very well. And I think then the whole, do they care, is how they then respond to that, right?
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
Although I will say, as you know, we do a lot of client satisfaction surveys for agencies, and we talk to their clients. And I don't know that it's a very rare conversation where where a client will not say to me, I love them, they're great, but this thing, whatever the thing is, I know I should talk to him about it.
Mm,
And then there's this long pause, and I always say, why haven't you? Yeah,
mm,
I know. I'm going to do it, but I don't think they do. So I do think, first of all, on the client side, if you're unhappy, it's not fair to make the agency try and guess that you're unhappy or why you're unhappy. You're an adult, you're a professional. There's a way to have that conversation kindly, respectfully, but with clarity. And on the agency side, if you're seeing signs that feel off, don't wait for the client to say something to you, because in a lot of cases, they
mm.
don't until they call you to tell you they've hired another agency.
Yeah.
So neither side should be reluctant or shy about saying something feels wrong. Can we have a conversation?
I think I agree with you, Drew. But if there's any Rocket clients listening, and if you've got any bugbears, feel free to reach out to me. We'll
Right?
solve it.
Yeah.
um, in term in terms of where I want to steer the conversation now, probably comes out almost a little bit back to the beginning of the conversation. What are you seeing, more macro, and not in terms of economic conditions, but what are you seeing in terms of just general trends, in terms of um, is it a shift to the big agency, the globals? Is it a shift to independent agencies? Is it a shift towards um, in-house, having a village of agencies for lots of things, or steering towards full service? And I think because these things always ebb and flow, and I know there's not
Yeah.
one answer to that, but I'd just be curious as to kind of where you see the landscape if we put kind of economic conditions to one side.
So it's a pendulum that's always swinging, right? So right now, the big agencies are not in favor. Um, it really is the mid and small sized agencies that are getting more opportunities from larger and larger clients. And when you think about it, if you're the client, that makes perfect sense. I would much rather be a big fish in a smaller pond and have that agency really, really, really not want to lose me. I'm going to get more senior people. I'm going to get more attention. Whereas if I go to a big holding company agency and I'm, somewhere in the middle of their client roster, I'm going to get the middle of their client, talent, or, their agency talent as well. So I think that's number one. Number two, I think clients are very clear that they want agencies to have a depth of expertise in both the work the agency does. So whether it's digital marketing or PR or whatever it is, but also a depth of knowledge about my business. So one of the things we see, so we do research every year, we're on, I think, year 15, of talking to clients about how they feel about some aspect of their agency relationship. And one of the things we've seen from the very beginning is agencies that already have a depth of expertise in my industry are always going to have a leg up over a generic full service agency. I don't want to teach an agency my business. Do they have to learn my business inside the industry? Yes. But if they have already worked with 27 pharma clients and I'm a pharma client, we're much further down the path of them learning about my pharma versus everybody else's pharma, as opposed to me having to teach them the whole industry. So I think I want to be big enough to really matter to the agency. I want the agency to be a specialist, and ideally a specialist kind of crosshairs, meaning the agency is a specialist in what the work they do, and they're a specialist in who they do that work for. I think that's what clients are looking for today.
Yeah, interesting. Um, and I think in the Australian context, it's slightly different. I think the market is so much smaller than the States,
Yeah,
and I think that that macro global agency versus some of the indies, I think that's definitely in play at the moment. And then I think it's the bit where it's a little bit different is I think when you get to the specialization area, often in the Australian market, it'll be specialization with, whether it's within a digital or within an element of digital or PR or whatever it might be. The getting into kind of a subset of marketing and in a kind of particular industry vertical, there's definitely agencies doing it, but it's probably not as pronounced. You'll have it might even be B2B, but it might not be pharma or SaaS and there's definitely examples of it. But I think slightly different probably to some of the stuff where you see in North America, where I think I was at a conference in Texas last year and a guy was presenting and he specialized in Google Map optimizations in the automobile space. And I was like, wow,
Right.
Must be a pretty small business. And then he kind of got up there and it was kind of literally hundreds of dealerships for one particular brand, right? And you do that across 4 or 5 different manufacturers, and that's a pretty big business. When I think in the Australian market, you just couldn't have a business at that level working just within one category.
Well, I think the sort of apples to apples of that is in the States, for a lot of those specialties, there's enough businesses within the States to have that specialization. I think in a smaller country like yours, it would be if you wanted to transcend the boundary of Australia and work with other countries in your region. And therefore, then you could have enough at bats and opportunities to say, oh, well, we're the automotive agency for this region of the world. And we understand the cultural differences in these 5 countries that allow us to do that. So I think part of it is from both the client and the agency side, what is the long-term intention, of the agency? Do I want to stay an Australian agency, or do I want to do something bigger or again, do I want, we work with an agency in Australia that ironically is a kind of med tech agency, and half of their clients are American clients who want a bigger presence in Australia. So again, that's how they've broadened their market share, right? So I think it's things like that.
Yeah, and it's funny. Again, definitely the more specialized you are, then generally the wider geographical footprint you will have, and we're a funny market as well. Where I think even within cities, people are quite parochial. Where I want an agency in Sydney, I want a Melbourne agency or a Perth agency. When in the States, it's speaking to friends that have agencies there, it's kind of like you'll have clients all across the nation. Some you've never met before, some you jump on a plane and see twice a year. But I think people are a little bit less bogged down into wanting to use someone in their city. But it's interesting that
but there are also agencies in the States that are like, we're a Chicago-based agency, and all our clients are going to be in Chicago or within an hour, circumference around Chicago. So it happens here in the States too. Probably happens a little less often.
Yeah, it's interesting. Interesting similarities and differences. Drew, I love having you on the pod. I could talk agencies and marketing and the shifting landscape forever. So yeah, really appreciate your time. I thank you for coming onto the pod, and hope to have you back sometime soon.
I would love it. Thanks for having me.